We are getting closer and closer to the big day, the deadline to get the Week magazine delivered to someone you love for a saving of up to 43% off the shop price. You can do this simply by using the code PODXMAS at checkout when you subscribe. Give someone the gift of the Week magazine every week. Visit dennismags.co.uk/theweek and enter the code PODXMAS, PODXMAS, to get up to 43% off. It's the week ending Saturday the 15th of December, and this is The Week Unwrapped, brought to you by Barclays Corporate Banking. In the past 7 days, we've seen Theresa May surviving an attempted Tory coup, Donald Trump threatening to shut down the US government over the Mexico border, and Meghan Markle becoming the most searched name on Google for the second year running. But we're here to bring you some of the stories that passed under the radar this week. Big news not making headlines right now, but with repercussions for all our lives. I'm Olly Mann. Let's unwrap the week. And joining me today from the Week's digital team are Rebecca Gillie, Cameron Tait, and Hollie Clemence. And starting the show this week is Cameron. What do you think this week should be remembered for?
Millions of people are being robbed and no one seems to care.
It's one thing to see all of these big data breaches happen, Equifax, Facebook, now Google, Twitter, but it's another thing to connect the dots between those data breaches and what happens in my personal life. And to be honest, it's real hard to look at what happened with this Google data breach and say, well, come on, that was Google+. Who really cares about Google+? They're going to sunset the service anyway. How does this connect to my life?
CBS's Dan Patterson reporting on the recent data breaches. So Cameron, what's the story here apart from the list of services he reeled off that have had data breaches?
Yeah, well, this is a really great way to end the year, I think, because...
Happy Christmas, everybody.
Happy Christmas. Data breaches have been a huge part of 2018, and there's been a pretty significant one during the week, and no one really seems to give a damn about it. So 52.5 million users of the Google Plus social media service had their records and personal information hacked.
Hacked by who?
Well, nobody knows exactly who has accessed it at the moment.
Okay, well, that's why it's hard to care about, isn't it? And also, when you say, how many? 52 million?
52.5 million.
I mean, the reason no one cares is because we all know there aren't really 52 million users of Google+. There's a lot of people that were conned into clicking on it once and they haven't looked at it since.
Well, that's the thing. So a lot of people don't really care about this because, I mean, who really uses Google+? I mean, there might be 3 or 4 people in the entire world who actively use it. But many of us signed up to it anyway because when it came out, Google said, look, let's just throw it into your Google account. So it'll link up your YouTube, it'll link up your Gmail system. Most of you will have a Google Plus account without really realising it.
Okay, but again, this existential threat of there's been a data breach, but we don't know who's got in there, we don't know what they've taken and why it matters. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can see why people don't care. Why should they care?
No, I find that a really interesting way of looking at it. So if you have someone that takes something of yours and you don't know who's done it or really what they've taken of yours, and you just say you don't really care about it. Imagine if someone robbed your house and you didn't know who did it, and you wouldn't just go, whatever.
No, but what have you lost? I mean, if someone robbed my house, I've lost everything. What's in my Google Plus account?
Well, in your Google Plus account, it can be a lot of personal information. So it can be things like your age, your email address, your telephone numbers. A lot of that is public, but there are also things that some people choose to set to not public that have been exposed.
I think I'm definitely guilty of being one of the meh people. I got emailed today by Netflix saying I'd logged in Thailand, which I definitely haven't been to Thailand recently, and I thought, change my password, which is probably a really bad attitude, but similar to Ollie, unless concrete money's been stolen from my account, I can't get kind of head up about it.
The thing is because the data, like user data, is the currency of like the whole web ecosystem. It's so valuable to so many people, like developers, advertisers, etc. But I think we, the people who are the actual subject of the data, I think it's very difficult for us to get our heads around the extent to which, to a lot of corporations, developers, etc., our data is more valuable to them than money, and it's hard for us to conceptualize the ways that we are being, exploited through that data.
I think it's also because it's a relatively new phenomenon as well that the people aren't really grasping it because some people don't even know what data they have online. So especially when you sign up to a service and it will ask you for loads of information, I can't honestly tell you what I gave Netflix. It says that I've got to log in with an email address, but I'm pretty sure they've got my home address and all of that.
Yeah, but what can they do with it? I mean, basically, if someone hacks into your Netflix, they can upgrade your plan, can't they? I mean, it's not that exciting a hack, is it? That's the thing. It's difficult to get excited about if you don't know what it is.
Yeah, but I think the Google one is interesting because it tops off a very interesting 4 months of mass hacks from other companies. So we've had the British Airways hack that happened in September where 382,000 customers were affected. That actually leaked credit card details. We also had 9.4 million people affected by Cathay Pacific. They were hacked. And then there was also the Marriott International hack, which happened at the end of last month. That was 500 million people were affected in that one. And that was things like card details and personal information.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Even if you think, well, if an unknown number of people have accidentally got access to my email address, my name, my age through Google+, you might not think that's a huge deal. But if they can't protect those details, there's no particular reason they could protect any other details. Like you say, your credit card details. I don't know, I feel like data breaches are becoming so commonplace that we're kind of ignoring them. But it is actually a really scary thought to know that even a company like Google, one of the biggest companies in the world, can't adequately protect even the most basic of your information.
Well, on that basis, Holly, do you think Google should have apologised, actually, for this? Because, instead they've sort of offered reasons why it happened. Should they have made a point of saying sorry to the people affected by it?
Definitely. I think they're still in the process of contacting people, and they should have come out earlier and admitted what had happened. I think probably one of the problems is that we all feel powerless to it because Google is such a big thing. If we just removed Google from the internet, we'd all be struggling each day. There's so many companies like airlines, hotels that we need to give those details to, and they need to be online for us to do things, get by in life now, that we're powerless not to give those details. So unless you completely don't go on the internet ever again, I can't see how else we get around it.
There's also, Rebecca, the issue that Google is international. So to whose country's law do they answer?
Yeah, that's kind of an ongoing issue that's still being worked out, and I think it's going to take a long time before we kind of get any sort of clear kind of consensus on that. And also, of course, it makes it that much more difficult for people who have been victims of these hacks to seek much in the way of, compensation, be it in the form of actual money or in the form of just, a sense of justice that your concerns have been addressed. They are kind of untouchable in that sense. And again, because Google Plus is set to, they're going to be shutting it down, I think it's in April next year.
Sunset it?
They're going to be
as
sunsetting
the CBS man
it
said.
In April. There is a sort of sense, I think, of Google being like, they do sort of want to minimise the attention on this case because they figure most people don't care about Google Plus and it's going to be gone soon anyway, so try not to bring too much attention to it.
Well, one of the reasons I think that people also don't care, and this is something I found in The Guardian, is that you really need Google in pretty much everything that you do online. Searching, your emails, I think most of us will all use a Gmail account here. I probably couldn't imagine a day without using some form of Google service. So I think people kind of think who gets angry at Google? I can't think of many people that get angry at Google. But when we had the Cambridge Analytica scandal at the beginning of the year, there was a much bigger outcry because there was already this kind of tension between Facebook and a lot of its users, and I think people could really rally behind it.
But it's partly because, this is a slightly strange comparison, I suppose, but the discussion we were having last week with Arian about fast food restaurants putting up their prices, and so often we kept mentioning McDonald's as a brand name, whereas actually, of course, there's Burger King, there's KFC, there's Subway, there's loads of fast food companies. McDonald's is like the tentpole one everyone turns to criticise. In the same way, when it comes to personal information online, the first company you think of, who am I dubious about giving my consent for my personal information? Facebook. Whereas Google have almost, despite being the biggest internet company, sort of slipped under the radar because people don't think that when they use Google Maps to get to a location, that is personal data too.
Oh yeah, and every time that you put in a search, Google will log that. Google really does have a lot of information about us, but again, we need it, so a lot of people aren't that fussed about it. Facebook, people could really get behind it and kind of say, look, it's really bad that you're using my data and you're just hungry for my personal information. And I think that's why a lot of people have also got behind the airline hacks as well, because people think, hang on a minute, I can try and get some compensation out of this. So as soon as they're searching, let's say, Cathay Pacific hack, and can I get compensated, that would be much more popular than reading about 500,000 people being hacked.
But the impact of all of this might be that people do improve their personal security online. It's one thing to shrug your shoulders and say there's nothing I can do about being hacked, but I think it does make it more likely, doesn't it, that people at least improve the strength of their passwords.
They won't. Do you know what I've really noticed across all these data breaches as well is that there's a really strong entitlement culture of people looking at, it might change, but at the moment I feel like a lot of people are looking at themselves as just like these these innocent victims of these data breaches, and it's all about like, can I get compensation? Can I get compensation for this, like the airlines hacks and stuff? That's what people are interested in. They're really seeing themselves as victims. Like, I think we've really normalised the degree to which we hand over our personal data to other companies, and now there's this expectation that, well, they must be protecting it, you know. And I think a lot of people have lost sight of the fact that we are autonomous and we do have the power to try and limit or otherwise protect ourselves from these kind of breaches. I think it's become looked upon as part of normal life now, like trying to get compensation if your train's delayed.
Well, and also on that normality point, Holly, Google Plus was a failed social network, but it was a social network owned by Google, which is free at the point of use because they sell advertising. So everyone actually uploading their data to that did know this stuff that I'm putting on there will become more Googleable and will be sold against my name for advertising. So although it's not nice that it's hacked by someone, it is data at least they were prepared to share.
There is a difference, I think, between like, NHS getting hacked. That's obviously quite a scary thing. You can't really help going into healthcare and giving information, and a social media site, and maybe someone on Instagram that's posted loads of pictures. If they all got hacked or their messages, I feel like we'd have different sympathy for different people. I think there's probably also a generation difference. It's quite interesting how maybe an older generation might have left their front door open back in the day, and they're now the generation that are maybe more sceptical of giving information online, whereas younger people have been brought up with the internet and have a completely different consideration of their privacy rights.
And Cameron, if you're listening to this and worried that maybe you have been hacked, how do you find out?
Well, Google will contact you directly, and they've got a lot of information about you, so they'll find one way of getting in touch.
Now, before we move on, this is something a bit unusual. I just wanted to bring your attention to a charity fundraiser that I am involved in. It's from my other podcast, The Modern Man, but it's not just us. There's a group of wonderful podcasters, Do the Right Thing, The Guilty Feminist, Comedians Comedian, Beef and Dairy Network and others, have got involved to record a Christmas single. So the idea is it's kind of like Band-Aid, but with podcasters.
Why weren't we invited?
We were really aiming for the big guys. Anyway, the proceeds all go to a very worthy cause called Samuel's Charity. This is a charity that essentially improves lives on children's wards. And they're a really small charity run by a guy who lost his son Samuel to childhood cancer. The song is called The Sounds of Christmas. I'm going to abuse my responsibilities here on the show by playing you a little bit. I'd like you to be excited about that. Would you like to hear a little bit?
Yes.
This is Podcast All Stars with The Sounds of Christmas. Out now.
So how am I supposed to move on and forget? 'Cause all I want for Christmas is inside my head. So turn off the carols and jingle the bells. Let's boil the chestnuts in stew. Don't light any fireworks, it hurts like hell. 'Cause Christmas reminds me of you. The sounds of Christmas remind me of you.
So what do you think?
Move over, Bublé.
Absolutely. Yeah, you noticed my tones in
There
there.
was a little Pierce Brosnan interlude from you. I think I picked it up there.
Anyway, so yes, that is The Sounds of Christmas by the podcast All Stars. It is available to download now. You can stream it for free on all the usual services, but please do buy it because the money goes to charity, and you can find it on Apple Music, Amazon, everywhere, really. It's the sales that count and make all the difference to that charity this Christmas time. Right, thank you for indulging me. Holly, you're up next. What do you think this week will be remembered for?
Is it time we all take a free ride?
Welcome to Luxembourg, one of the smallest and richest countries in the world. And it's just gone the extra mile to prize people from their cars and onto public transport. From next summer, traveling on the country's buses, trams and trains will be completely free. The Grand Duchy is the first country to take this step, and it could prove to be the ticket to a greener future.
The Raw Politics programme from Euronews. Holly, what do we have here?
This is Luxembourg's new coalition government that's pledged to scrap tickets on all public transport, which could happen as soon as next summer.
Scrap tickets as in it's completely free to ride,
Yes.
regardless of who you are, what your income is, what the length of the journey is.
Yeah, it's kind of revolutionary. It's obviously a bid to reduce air pollution and traffic congestion, but I think there's other elements to it that are really interesting.
Enlighten us. Which elements?
Well, it kind of puts the ability to move about in a similar setting to the way we view the right to healthcare. It's kind of giving it a new importance that I don't think we really value here in the UK. So there's things like people are stopped from getting better jobs here, I think, because they can't afford the commute. People are more isolated if they can't afford public transport. That would all completely change if the government just decided that we could all have free transport.
Okay, I mean, you've already moved this on to the obvious next question, which is, could we implement something like this here? But I dare say, Rebecca, the answer to that is no, because we're not Luxembourg. I mean, Luxembourg's tiny and everyone works in the city.
I think this is the key, what we heard in the clip, really. They describe Luxembourg as a small and rich country, which is very true. And I mean, the UK, obviously, on a global scale, is also small and rich. But we're not Luxembourg, small and rich. It's very easy to implement a system like this in a country where almost everybody works in Luxembourg City. So basically, the commute, even from the outer extremes of Luxembourg, is basically equivalent to what a normal kind of suburban commute would be in this country.
Exactly, be a €7 fare or something.
Yeah, but
whereas if you're travelling from Liverpool to London for a meeting, that could be 60 quid, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it seems not feasible here because of the difference in the size and the expense. But in addition to that, I think there's also a cultural divide. I think that, the UK is crept closer in recent years towards that kind of US-style mentality of why should I pay for this hypothetical wastrel to use services with my hard-earned money, etc., which is quite different from obviously the mentality that the Luxembourg government have.
Particularly as I think the issue in England is actually quite limited to major cities, so commuting into London or Birmingham or Manchester or something along the lines of that. So you'll be expecting a lot of people that it really doesn't affect having to chip in with it. But still, there are a hell of a lot of people that will be commuting into London. So in London alone, every day you have around 600,000 people coming in. That is the population of Luxembourg.
The thing is that it's not just about, I mean, obviously the obvious question is, we have privatised rail, buses, etc., and those companies obviously need to make money. So it would involve a huge renationalising of those transport networks, which is obviously very unlikely. But also, how would we maintain the rail system, for instance, which is huge and sprawling considering the relatively small size of the UK, and that it requires a huge amount of investment to maintain.
OK, so we've discussed the can it happen here thing. Probably not. Holly, back to Luxembourg then. This is coming from a left-leaning coalition government there. They're also looking to legalise cannabis, increase the number of public holidays, that sort of thing. Some people from a business perspective, therefore, will say, well, that's all fine and idealistic, but it hasn't been thought through this. They're going to lose money.
Yeah, they're not the only ones thinking about it, though. There's the Paris mayor is pushing for it at the moment. There's the regional president, which is pushing back, and they've said a report shows that it wouldn't actually help congestion, but it might be a political move, that report.
No one pays on the Paris Metro anyway, so...
Is that if you're a resident?
No, I mean, then everyone just jumps the turnstile.
There's 5 German cities as well that are trialling it, and Tallinn in Estonia gives free public transport for residents. So it's not only Luxembourg. There are other big places doing it. And if you looked at the UK, you could imagine maybe London. I did some sums, and the cost that we all put in from our fares equates to about what we put into the EU budget. So maybe we could just use the money for that.
Put it on the bus.
Why wasn't that on the side of a
give me a
bus?
call.
Yeah.
But the thing is that this is the thing. We've mentioned London a couple of times already, and this is kind of the issue, is that that's probably the only way that it would be feasible in this country. But there is already such a huge divide between London and the rest of the country, and it probably justified resentment, particularly about transport, especially in the north and in more rural areas, that so much is invested in making London's public transport effective and that's surprisingly cheap. I mean, it's expensive compared to Europe, but it's cheaper to get a bus in London than it is, when I go home to Weymouth, it's about twice the price.
Yeah, it's already subsidised, isn't it?
Yeah,
it caps out at a certain amount.
The unfortunate irony is that this is a system, free public transport can only really be effective in a small and very dense area, whereas the people who could really benefit from that are the people who are isolated in more rural communities.
But in Luxembourg, are they going to lose money? So they're counting up, presumably, the efficiency savings they'll make at having to collect people's fares and track down fare evaders and all that stuff, the bureaucracy of it, against what they're losing from people not paying those fares. How do the sums work out?
They haven't explained it properly yet, and it is nationalised out there, whereas obviously we work on a kind of franchise system, so presumably it will all be taxpayer funded. Whether their taxes will go up to pay for that, they haven't really said that yet.
These countries like Luxembourg and Switzerland, sometimes they seem more like a private members club. Do you know what I mean? The income there is extremely high, and it just seems like you're a member of this tiny, very wealthy country, and you get all these amazing privileges that just wouldn't really be feasible anywhere else. And then the rest of us are just kind of left looking in, being like, oh, that would be really great.
Not a happy country, though, apparently. Luxembourg, very low down in the happiness ranking.
But they'll be very happy if they get free train fares.
That's true. That might improve their quality of life on some level.
But I was thinking, surely there are more, because the big driver behind this is to cut down getting cars into the city and obviously carbon emissions and all the likes of that. Are there not easier ways of doing it?
Well, let's discuss.
Just banning cars.
Go on, motoring editor.
Well, no one's done that,
Yes.
have they? Have they? I'm saying no one's done it.
No,
I mean, I know there are cities like Oxford or whatever where there's very limited sort of ways of driving around during the day. But I mean, no one's actually banned cars completely anywhere in this country, have they?
Not in this country and not in any country as far as I'm aware. But there are plans. They're very vague plans. But I would say some of the most concrete are the ultra low emission zone that's coming in April next year, where you'll basically be charged about 25 quid a day to go and drive in central London. So for me, I think that's a much more effective way of getting high polluting cars out of the city.
And also, as we've been saying, Luxembourg is a rich country, and it doesn't seem to me like the main reason that people weren't taking public transport was that they couldn't afford it. It's the fact that cars are just more convenient, and most people prefer to travel in them than with the rest of the public on public transport. And that's kind of the issue that's kind of the crux of the issue really across the world.
And I do say that very reluctantly because A, I love driving, and B, I pay stupid amounts of money to come into London on the train. But it is more effective to just get cars out of the city.
Finally this week, Rebecca, what do you think this week will be remembered for?
A dog is for life, just not at Christmas.
Okay, go ahead. Merry Christmas.
Is he ours?
He's ours. Oh, you're making mommy cry.
What's his name?
An extract from a video of children reacting to presents in the form of puppies from Babies TV. Rebecca, why have you brought this emotional story to the table?
But it's ironic, really.
Literally laugh like Cruella de Vil.
Yes, exactly. I'm not an animal lover, and this is not the kind of story that I would ordinarily see myself bringing. However, I have found it very interesting.
What's the story?
The story is that animal shelters across Germany have been joining this movement to temporarily suspend adoptions from their shelters over the Christmas period. And this includes Berlin, which has the largest animal shelter in Europe. And the reason they're doing that is to try and cut down on the amount of people seeking to adopt animals as a Christmas present because of the unintended consequences that can often have.
Okay, interesting. Having criticised you, Holly, for immediately bringing this on to will Britain follow suit in the last story, I think I will ask you, do you think this is something Britain should follow suit on? Because as far as I know, if you go to Battersea Dogs Home or whatever, you can effectively get a dog for Christmas, can't you? It's just that you need to make sure you've spent the weeks choosing the one you want and proven that your house is suitable and all the rest of it. But there's nothing stopping you taking that puppy and putting it in a box and giving it to someone.
I think there have been shelters in the past in the UK that have put a stop around December, but I don't think there's any on at the moment. And lots of animal charities in the UK have warned against giving an animal as a Christmas present. I'm going to be controversial and say I'm not totally against it. Definitely a random present to a mate, giving them a puppy, insane.
Yes.
But if you and your partner have decided that you want an animal and you give it to
and
your
you're
child,
responsible people,
and you know that you're going to look after the dog,
and you don't keep the dog in a box for 10 hours under the tree.
Yeah.
You just want the quick Lady and the Tramp style reveal. I think I agree. I mean, they should be able to judge, shouldn't they, these animal shelters, whether the people that are choosing to buy the puppies or cats or whatever are responsible people. And you'd almost say by definition the people who try and get, if you like, a second-hand dog or cat from a shelter are likely to be the animal lovers, aren't they? They're not people who are buying them off some breeder on the internet.
Well, the one thing is that people who are interested in adopting animals will still be able to go through that process. They just won't be able to actually get the animal until January.
But why not? If they've been through the process and they're responsible, why not?
So first thing is that there are numbers in support of this. Dogs Trust, which is a UK charity, said that it received last year between Boxing Day and the end of January, it received almost 5,000 calls from people who are looking to give away dogs that they'd received as Christmas present. There's an interesting article about the German shelters on Deutsche Welle, and some of the people they spoke to, like workers at the shelters, said that what happens is, firstly, as you can imagine, the novelty wears off, or the kids didn't really want a puppy that much, and then the parents can't, they don't want the trouble of looking after it themselves. But also that Christmas time can be a really difficult time to have a pet brought into the home because it can be quite chaotic. The house isn't in its ordinary routine, and that can cause trouble with the dog settling in. And then conversely, the new owners start thinking, oh, this is much more trouble than we anticipated, and we no longer want the dog.
Cameron, I'd say that would be a good time, wouldn't it, to bring a puppy into a house at Christmas time? The family are all there. You can spend a bit more time thinking about it.
No, I've grown up with animals my entire life, and bringing a dog, particularly a rescue animal, it really depends on the animal's personality. Some are really extroverted; they'll love being around noise and love being around lots of people. But a lot of them just need to be in quite a quiet environment and a calm one. And so having lots of this is going to sound really quite strange, but Christmas crackers, that can send a lot of dogs. It can really put the fear of God into them. So it's really not a very smart idea. And especially if you give it to a child, you can see it in that video, and you can see them on loads of these viral videos. They burst into tears as soon as, because they're excited, they burst into tears and they see the dog. But some dogs will take that as a sign of sadness. I don't know. I just think, why not just give them a picture of the dog for Christmas and say, you're getting one of these, just wait a few days.
I mean, I must say, I'm actually in the process at the moment of trying to adopt a kitten. I won't bore you into the whole process to why that is, but essentially we've been advised to get 2 male kittens because we have an older female cat and a young son, and that's the best combination apparently for whatever reason, cat lovers tell us. So we've tried to do it right. We've gone to all the animal shelters. They come and do a home visit. They interview you. We're still we've been approved, and we're still months away from being able to get one. So actually this business about we're oversubscribed with animals. In the UK already, the animal charities are so careful about who they give animals to that I wonder if any more restrictions are really welcome.
Well, I don't think, if it's any consolation, I don't think this is likely to come in the UK anytime soon. I don't think there's any particular movement towards it. But kind of to broaden it out a bit, beyond the debate about whether people who adopt a dog at Christmas or whatever will take good care of it, a lot of the shelter workers in Germany who are participating in this temporary ban say that we need to rethink really the way we look at pets and animals as a whole. The idea that an animal is not like an object and that you shouldn't be giving them as presents at all. If you want to give an animal a home, then that's good and that should be supported. But we need to get away from the mentality that animals are essentially like objects that you can give away. I think he worked at the animal shelter in Bremen in Germany, said that a dog is a member of the family and you don't give away a member of your family. You don't give family members as presents.
I think there's a growing understanding, isn't there, Cameron, amongst the general public, partly because of all these sort of dogs are for life, not just for Christmas type campaigns that have been running over the years, and partly because of the internet and people educating themselves and all the rest of it, that pets, are living beings with feelings, and people seem to be treating them less like objects generally, less like something that you give.
Yeah, I agree with that partly. I think people are far more educated about it now than they were, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago. But I also think that people they kind of show their pets off as objects or accessories on social media. So it is that kind of idea.
The dog selfie.
That's so terrible.
Doesn't even work, does it? Because the dog can't take a picture.
No,
doesn't have the dexterity.
It's really funny when you see these pictures of dogs and it's like the perfect picture, and you think, how long did you take to take that bloody picture? Anyway, so they are. This is going to sound really strange. They're really objectified on social media.
That's so true, yeah.
It's true.
That's a really good
and
point.
So people are after that kind of cute dog, and I wonder if you get it for Christmas and it's like, oh, it's that cute doggy, and then a week after when you realise that you actually have to feed it and clean up the mess it makes.
Yeah, you don't get any likes for that.
No.
I think in defence, though, those dogs are probably really well looked after. Like, I know people that post dogs on social media and they love their dogs to bits. They're like their children. They do everything for them. They get the best food, the best Christmas jumpers.
Yeah,
so I don't think it is all bad. They're not.
I would like to put a little asterisk next to that. That wasn't a sweeping statement that everyone who posts pictures of their dogs are terrible. But there's a select few that are, but many of you aren't. Don't worry. I'm not against you.
Rebecca, you brought us this story. I'll give you the final word on it. What are we to make of this?
I think to me it's an interesting contrast between the way that, as we were just talking about, our views on pets and animals have evolved, and we do see them now more as members of the family and kind of autonomous beings. But there is still this weird, actually very outdated idea that you can put a puppy in a box and give it to kids still, and then post the pictures on YouTube and, rack up tons of views. And I think maybe it is something that is worth thinking about more carefully.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to go and take my Christmas present to Rebecca and drown it in the Thames. Never mind, that is it from this edition of The Week Unwrapped. My thanks to Rebecca Gillie, Holly Clemence and Cameron Tait. And also to our sponsor, Barclays Corporate Banking. Their industry experts can help your business. Find out more at barclayscorporate.com/theweek. Now, never miss an episode when you subscribe to this podcast. Just search for The Week Unwrapped on your app of choice and hit subscribe. Oh, and don't forget that Christmas offer on the magazine as well. Use the code PODXMAS at the checkout for up to 43% off the shop price. Subscribe to The Week magazine at dennismags.co.uk/theweek. I've been Olly Mann. Our music is by Tom Morby, the producer Chica Ayres at Rethink Audio, who's also an animal lover. Until we meet again to unwrap next week, bye-bye.